we're going to get to these questions. Deborah, what is Article 6.2? Break it down, Deborah.
Okay, I tried to answer a question about that in the chat, so people want to read. But really, Article 6 talks about international cooperation and collaboration to try to just address the challenge of climate change mitigation, reducing emissions. And it says, the climate really doesn't care where we reduce our emissions, just reduce them. So a country like Switzerland that has a real hard time reducing their emissions at home can go out and say, well, I'll invest my money somewhere else and reduce emissions there. And Article 6.2 provides a platform through which countries or parties to the Paris Agreement can collaborate, and they can trade emissions and monetize them, and importantly, use them for compliance with their commitments under the Paris Agreement. So what it creates is international flow of cash, basically, and an international flow of credits. And what Gary was trying to tell us is that if we nudge our system a little bit in the United States so that we can collaborate with Switzerland and with other big buyers that are interested in emission reductions, then there's, like Gary said, there's more money than we know what to do with. It kind of sounds crazy, but what's hard is pipeline. So I saw that someone in the chat said that her company has a hydrogen project. Yeah, we can monetize that hydrogen project through Article 6.2 collaboration. The system has to be set up right so that we have the right to do that, because the convention only allows participation between governments, parties to the agreement. So that requires that the U.S. nods its head. The government just nods its head. That all it has to do is they've already signed the Paris Agreement. They've already agreed to all of this. They just have to nod this head about selling to Switzerland. So it's really a tremendous opportunity, because Switzerland's just one example. There are a lot of buyers out there. And I think, as Tariq also mentioned, the private sector really also wants to clean up their act and lower their carbon footprints. And so they are also looking for pipeline. So we can create investments, disadvantaged communities that improve the environment, that create jobs that have a long-term positive impact. And it costs more to do that than to do business as usual. It costs more to do that than to just keep doing things the way we do today. And it's this marginal cost I was trying to talk about before that we can cover and make profitable and affordable through the use of international funds and the funds of big companies like the companies in the oil and gas industry. So that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but I hope it helped a little bit.
It did. Ron, when you got to go.
Yes, again, thank you for including me at the beginning of the chat. I put in my contact information and my team, small business team's contact information. Again, I welcome it and challenge you to reach out to us about this and other ways that we can support you. I have to leave now, but again, my information is in the chat. And again, thank you all for letting me participate, and look forward to hearing from some, if not all of you, in the near future.
Ron, let me give you an opportunity really quickly to advertise what's coming up in 6 months from now. Just about.
We are having, yeah, okay. We're having our Department of Energy Small Business Forum and Expo. It's the only one in the federal government agency that puts one on. Keith and Gary were in New Orleans. That we did one in July last year. We're going upriver to Minneapolis, June 4th and 5th, where we will bring all of our national labs and as many of our program offices to be there, so you can network with, reach out to, and find out how you can do business with. And I was talking to Keith while we were having our discussion. I want to continue this discussion and maybe have a convening there as we're putting our agenda together about what Gary, Tariq, Dale, Deborah, Terry, Ricardo, and Kasim have spoken about. We can continue this momentum. So June 4th and 5th, save the date, Minneapolis, Minnesota. There you guys.
Ron, thank you so much for
Thank you,
your
Ron.
hospitality.
Thank you.
Ricardo, based upon what Deborah had shared, tell us who are the MBE suppliers, small businesses, and the sectors that could play in this game today because of what they do. That's what the MBEs need to know.
So it really depends on the location that the MBEs are. So, for example, in Trinidad and in the West Indies, there's a lot of interest with respect to waste to energy projects, even projects involving geothermal. Dale is involved in a project involved with hydrogen. So, and I think in the US it kind of mirrors the same sort of landscape in terms of interest. So somebody puts in the chat really succinctly there some steps or 9 steps in terms of getting involved in the CCS landscape, and is a lot more to the point in terms of what I delivered. So understanding the CCS landscape, certification and compliance and things like that. So I believe they also identified a, I can't remember if it was a company or a particular arm that would be able to assist the companies in the US.
Yes, there is, absolutely, because there's
Yeah.
many FPC clients who have engineering companies, who have innovation research companies. We work with HBCUs, so yes.
Yeah, and really it is about the economics and being able to provide a solution that could be economically feasible to the end user. And the grants and whatnot that are available to the MBEs really needs to be leveraged for these projects to be able to bring those economics to bear for the ultimate end user. And yes, the carbon credits would assist with that, but it would assist, carbon credits would really assist everybody across the board. It's really the advantages that the MBE brings specifically because of what is available to them and leveraging that to get involved in the projects in front of the bigger organizations that don't have that advantage, and being able to do it in a safe enough space that they don't damage the rest of their business, because getting involved in anything new, of course, is a risk. But from what I understand, you guys are also there in terms of providing that guidance, putting them in the right direction in terms of technology providers, because they are on the ground, they understand what their community needs. So perhaps looking at a community level and helping to develop the same kind of projects, waste to energy, solar, any kind of projects like that at a community level, building competence on those smaller projects to get that experience to be able to be involved in the larger projects, either singularly or as a group of MBEs.
Mm-hmm. Dale, thank you so much for that. You mentioned you're the country's manager for Trinidad and Tobago, arm of the French hydrogen pioneering company HDF Energy. HDF has said they want to come to the U.S. to do business. Tell us what types of MBEs you're looking for to partner with.
Right. So thanks, Keith. So we utilize a project risk matrix, or a project matrix that we look at for. We have pillars, and somebody did, as Ricardo said, put some of these exact pillars into the chat. So we look at political support. So if we're going into a region, a location, a local, we need to understand what are the local regulations, what governs the space. And so we look for companies and support that understand the local landscape. That is critical and key to any project developer. Also, we look at the idea. So we will work with the local MBEs to see what can be the project. And Ricardo gave a few. It could be waste energy, it could be hydrogen to fuel forklifts for warehouses. It could be any range of things that you could come up with.
Okay.
So we look at the viability. So we will work with MBEs around that to understand what is the business case and the viability of a project. Land is key in any project development as to where you situate it, and that's linked directly to permitting. So MBs who have access to land, access to warehousing, all of these or facilities do become a partner can partner with us or partner with in any of these spaces that we're talking about to access a 45V or 45Q.
What's minimum acreage? What's minimum acreage or hectares, as they say? What, convert that to acres. What do you minimum?
So it depends on the project. So if we're looking at, say, a solar project, you may need for 50 megawatts, you need 50 hectares of land, right? So it goes out about a hectare of land for solar. So it varies. It varies for technology. Similarly, if you're using wind, it would be for 50 megawatts, you require about 100 hectares because you need to space it out. So it varies on the technology, and it would vary on the specific location.
Got it.
But land key, locking in land and the arrangements for land sets the platform for the project. Understanding permitting, and so there's another, I think, MB in the chat speaking about permitting, and they do help companies navigate the permitting process, and there are a multitude of permitting processes, local, state, as well as federal permitting that is required to make projects work. And usually projects, especially in the US now, if you look at it, permitting has become the big issue with clean energy projects moving through the system. Then resources, you need resources, and the best way is to utilize local resources, the local labor market, local companies that provide technical resources, say be it electrical, civil, mechanical. All of these things would be best suited to come from the area that you're working at and from MBEs that have these resources and are accustomed working in the space. And then there's work around design, engineering, procurement, and construction. So construction jobs will be created. Procurement, there may be businesses that provide materials, services that will be required to develop a project, and MBs can play there as well as using local engineering support is another thing. And all of these things are geared towards helping reducing development costs. Reducing development costs and getting from concept to commission is a key part of getting projects to fruition. And there's also financing. There may be options for local banks to finance, minority banks to finance, credit unions, different things that you could utilize within the jurisdiction to be able to help move your project along. And I know Deborah spoke about international financing, but they're different. When you're creating a financial instrument for a project, there's debt equity, there's different types of debt, there's different types of equity that you can utilize to be part of a project. So those are the areas I see very critical that any developer would look at, including HDF, when you're looking for business opportunities and developing projects. So there's many ways that MBs could collaborate, as I say, and so we consider ourselves not a small player, but understanding the landscape and being agile and ability to navigate it, and local knowledge is key when it comes to that. So MBs do have an advantage. I posted a long explanation as to the advantage that 45V gives, right? I mean, we want the transition from fossil generated types of energy to cleaner types of energy, and it is a transition, and those tax credits that are available to MBs do help them get to allowing the production costs from fossils to get competitive with clean, and maximizing on the ability to do that, and teaming up with international developers as well as local developers and MBs, that money could be accessed to really advance and improve economic conditions.
So it sounds very much so like we have a timeline here of any project, depending on the project. You certainly need a legal staff, right? You need
Correct.
what kind of specific legal law firm would be, in this business?
So you would find it varies. So it varies. So there's one around developing shareholder agreements. So guys who do commercial law, people who do land, understanding land arrangements and land leases.
Yeah.
So it varies across the project. So it starts up initially with the first type of legal document would be land tenant, tenant versus tenant supplier kind of arrangement. So land agreement. Then it moves into, once you start developing what that consortium could look like, a shareholder agreement amongst the shareholders as to how they would play into the consortium, what services they were bringing in, what expertise they were bringing in, and how they value that in terms of equity. So that shareholder agreement, it gets into that when you create the consortium. Once you start progressing and you determine where your end product goes and your off-taker, then you develop your off-taker arrangements. Again, it becomes commercial there again as to who would be your off-taker, who would be your suppliers. So you have supplier arrangements, off-taker arrangements. And then, yeah, once you're operational, the entity now transitions from being a development consortium, and the shareholders, at that point, shareholders may decide the company is valuable, we could sell down and take our money and go, or we want to see this into production for a long time and be a long-term shareholder. And so it transitions into that kind of operation or one thing, one services, and the legal services with that would be around the insurance required and the legal guidance to run our operations. So that's how it works. Yeah.
Kasim, thank you so much, Dale. Where does the corporations like Constellation, Shell, Chevron play into this? What's the sweet spot for what is being said here for them?
For the large corporations, like that you mentioned, a number of them have already agreed to start reducing emissions and the technology. Their main concern is the technology and the feasibility of the plans that are implemented. So the companies like CADA are presenting plans that look and feel tangible for them, that they can get behind right away. And they understand the necessity for the technology to be implemented. They want to be at the forefront of it, as any industry leader wants to be. Chevron primarily, Chevron and Shell are taking steps to be the forefront so they can lead the rest of the organizations into the future. For them, the priority is the reduction of the emissions, but also utilizing those tax credits so that it could be beneficial for them to not only be green, but also be the innovators that are champions of the technology that's available today.
Got it.
Yeah, and if I could segue into that, Kasim, 100%. I mean, what we've seen, like you mentioned, Shell and some others, not to point out on any particular offset purchaser, but when you look at across the industry of those hard to abate industries, Keith, or you look at those challenged corporations that may have a certain level of emissions, they all have scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 goals. And some of those goals to reduce their GHG emissions, they would do organically through changes. But some of them in the meantime, they're going to purchase offsets so that they can reduce their footprints like that. And that's going to help drive the need and demand for these type of projects. And as Dale alluded to earlier, when you talk about some of the areas where MBEs can play legally, it's the drafting of, from a legal standpoint, you have your MOUs, memorandums of understanding, that's going to be required. As far as finance, to depend on how you leverage that capital stack, the 45V credits or some concessional or non-concessional financing. There's some special purpose vehicle contracts, SPVs. Just depends on how you want to kind of structure that. And lastly, and what's important for these landowners, this is where MBEs can really get in. We have a use case example in South Carolina and Texas where there's a nonprofit entity that came in and pulled in a network or formed a cooperative, legal again, a cooperative of farmers that could generate a certain amount of land mass or residual biomass that will reach the thresholds necessary as feedstock. And so all these are opportunities that where MBEs they may not have the, let's say the EPC and the hard capital, but they can position themselves in positions of arbitrage where they can have origination fees, origination agreements, or facilitation agreements as they build out their structure. So just wanted to add that, and thanks for that context, Kasim and Dale.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go to really quickly, want to ask Terry, but I just put in the chat the IAEOZsummit.com. I'd like everyone to become familiar with that, because that is the intersection between this kind of conversation, public policy, but that's supported by allocation budgets and innovation in the agriculture and energy space. And I'm very clear now. I wasn't as clear when we first got started. I was very foggy. I'm really clear where USDA has a significant role if, in fact, as an agency, they're looking to redeem the losses that minority farmers in particular who still have land should be exposed to these types of opportunities, and we win the climate game at the same time. Terry, final comment from me before we kind of close out here. I want to make sure that, one, our questions that have been asked, we thank you so much. We will be answering them even if we didn't answer them by way of experts responding, or I didn't even acknowledge them. They are being acknowledged, and there will be a survey after this. Terry, from a GTI perspective, you're like an IBM of this industry. And you literally have this relationship, working relationship with Kata Energy. Kata Energy. Tell us, as a company as sized as you are, global, right, in nature, where do you see, what's the attraction? What's the magnet for a company like Kata? What do they bring in terms of value to your company? And how do we, as your answer will help us understand how we expand upon that value?
Well, I do think, a company like GTI, we're a technology company and we're not for profit. So, we're not that versed in how carbon is traded, where the incentives lie and all that, the money situation. So it really helps us, I think, to talk to you and to be in a dialogue with Kata in order to truly understand the way to monetize some of this technology. So I do think it's a wonderful situation for us to work with Kata in that way.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate, I had no idea. If you would have asked me to take a test and do Russian roulette, I would have got it wrong, thinking that you were a nonprofit organization. But that brings some great context into the value of a small business. And, because as the audience has said, if you have local expertise, you have relationships, you have knowledge, and the combination of the three with business savvy and a business model in this space, in this sector, then, that combination brings value to a company like yours. Yeah.
Keith, if I could expand on what you said, Keith, just really quickly. Somebody like Terry is a diamond in the rough. It's a gold mine, and it would be a disservice to humanity to not put money behind the organization that she runs, GTI. That's the main goal of Kata, is to be able to have that war chest available to say, even with the tax credits available, we have hard capital and reserves so that we can put that money into the innovation and technology, because it is capital intensive. But to be able to have that option to say, we're not going to let this gem go to waste. We're going to put it on the crown and put it out there for everybody to see, because that's the future for humanity. So that's an important aspect of making sure that we have that available for people like Terry.
Hey, Keith, can I
yes.
ask a question to the panel? This is Melvin Anderson. The federal government requires past performance on first MBEs and small businesses. Is there any room in any of these sectors that will allow someone to start a business today and capitalize?
It depends on how it's approached, because it's King Week, and everything in this space is new. We're talking about demonstration projects, commercializing projects, getting to demand side. And, it's the fierce urgency of right now, okay? You can, if you structure a deal right, there's no past performance for CCS, okay? Because no one has really done it. They're starting to do it. So we just need to get in line. And that's what Keith and Ron can do for us. Because in Trinidad, these guys can tell you when they're in grade school, they teach them fossil fuels, oil and gas, chemistry, things like that. So, and that's why I'm putting the emphasis on the dysphoria, by coming together, mixing and matching, we can look at the opportunities, and if we can bring in the climate currency from abroad and stack it with the 45V and the 45Q, and to the extent that it can say, we can buy the same services, we can do the things with the support of an organization like TERS that any other company can do. It doesn't, the money don't have to go to the emitters. And that's what the social cost of carbon is about. Emitters, and I don't want to say it, the big companies for years, the reason there's so much more CO2 in the atmosphere that is warming the planet is because the profits were internalized and the pollution was socialized. So, with a restructuring and making that the deal points and structuring it in such a way where minorities and the disadvantaged communities work together, and create public-private partnerships that can then employ the service providers and the contractors and the thing. There's no prior experience, it's just getting it done. And if there's no need for DE&I or 8A or DBE, which I don't see there would if you're bringing your own money, because we really got a battle on our hands right now with with the red states, the right, attacking, all of the affirmative action issues. So this is something that can be done, and it doesn't require any certification for real. It's just the knowledge that we bring and the local minorities bring to make these deals happen, because they're happening right now, and they're going to happen whether we're a part of it or not.
And on that note, Melvin, CEO of Explore Skills, certainly workforce development is an aspect that we haven't even talked about. But what I love about this conversation, and I got to tell you honestly and most candidly, ladies and gentlemen, I did not know much about this space, and now I'm more intrigued than ever as an entrepreneur and one that wants to inspire you, the entrepreneur, to recognize the various channels that you have simply by being an entrepreneur and by stacking on a purpose and a passion for a community impact that you would like to make, from job creation to mentoring others as you grow in your revenue. And what we call, maybe Spike started it first, Spike Lee, just simply doing the right thing. This is a global impact. Dale, you remind me of going to Brookhaven, and I don't know if you know my guy over there who runs the STEM program. But when I put you two together, it's going to electrify not those 10 interns. When you have a large scale funding source, you need to be doing more than 10 internships. Okay, if we're serious about every aspect of what we talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been indeed my pleasure to co-host with my colleague, Ron Pierce, the Director of Office of Small Business and Utilization. This is one of a series of conversations, and this recorded conversation will be cut up, edited so that it gets to the right people for the right reasons. And you will see us again, as my dad used to say, God willing, and the creek don't rise, in early February, with a larger, more august body of people who some would call influencers and decision makers, and most of all, being curious about what you talked about today. Thank you so much for your time. This is Keith Moore here from the MBDA Federal Procurement Center and KDM CEO. It's been my pleasure. We will get to your questions, and we ask that you respond to the survey that will be coming your way. Thank you.